Hi, and welcome back to Video Effects. You've probably used a scanner to scan a document or picture before. But have you ever scanned a hand or a face? Today we will be learning some basics of using a scanner to manipulate time and the perception of photography as an accurate representation of real-world objects. What can you do with a scanner? Hopefully, when this video effects tutorial is over, you'll be able to do a whole lot more. Let's go! Hello, let's go. We're going to be talking about using a scanner as a means to record some sort of augmented animation or imagery. I like to use image capture or something else that allows for basic manipulation of what's happening and the ability to turn off any default image correction attributes. We'll work at 300 dpi and in color because with those settings the scanner will run at a slower speed, which makes it easier to shift things. So let's do an overview scan of my hand. The overview scan goes much faster than it will for the final scan. So let's scan a base location for the hand. That way we'll have an image that allows the viewer to understand completely what it is they're seeing within the context of the animation. Once we do that, we'll have sort of a baseline explaining what's happening in the image without any particular distortion. It just looks like a photograph of a hand pressed up against a piece of glass. See how much slower it goes when it's not the overview scan. Now we'll do a scan with some slight augmentation of movement, so the final image distorts. So as this is scanning, I'm moving my hand very slightly within the confines of where the scanner camera, I don't know what it's called, where that line is that's recording the image. Now, place your hand to the original location, scan again. This time with more movement so that the distortion is greater. The only movements that will be recorded of your hand, the only changes will be those that run along the camera sort of lens thing. So let's go and do another scan with even more movement. See how it just now made contact with my hand? I'm moving along with it. More so than the two previous times. Every time
resetting my hand to approximately where it was originally. I'm going to do this once more, but instead of going simply in the direction that the scanner is going, I'm going to go perpendicular so that you get some horizontal changes in the imagery as well. It's like watching paint dry, but a little bit more instantaneous of results. Now let's look at the images that I have captured. The first image has no distortion. The second one has mild to moderate distortion. The third one, I didn't replace my hand as well, but you get a different degree of distortion. The fourth one, even more distortion. See how it changes? What you're basically doing is taking an image one line at a time, cutting it into, in this case, hundreds of pieces, and then putting it back together as though you were taking those pieces from multiple slightly different time periods. The fifth image includes that horizontal distortion as well as vertical, since I moved my hand perpendicular as well as parallel to the image direction. Now, let's just take these images into Photoshop so you can get a better understanding of how they will animate. Then we will come back to do just a single image distortion of something being viewed in a 3D space. There's no real good way to say that. So, File, Scripts, load layers into Stack. Go back to my desktop, get these 5 images, load them up, cowboy. Give it a moment, since these images are decently sized at 300 dpi. Cool. I, by default, tend to have my animation window open. If you don't, go into your window, drop down, and click Timeline. In earlier versions of Photoshop, it was called Animation. We're going to create a frame animation. Go to this menu, create frames from layers. Oops, these are all out of sorts. So I'm going to take this first one that by default did not have the number attached to the back of it and drag it along because I didn't do the right file name. I'm going to copy these frames out, reverse them, make it so there's a delay of 0.08 seconds, which works out to about 12.5 frames per second. So a traditional animation frame rate, but not something that's often seen in any digital animation that is not frame by frame. 3D animation is afforded the luxury of not having to draw more frames to increase the time between keyframes. Now let's watch. Whoops. There we go. Now see that weird time distortion wiggle that is almost reminiscent of hand-drawn animation frames and the creative means of distorting them? But this exists in a raster live action sort of looking thing. Now we don't need this to be over 2,500 pixels wide, especially when I'm saving out to VHS. So I'm going to first rotate this image counterclockwise. I want it to look like a handshake. Change the image size, shortcut Command Option I, and make it 480 pixels tall, because that is the number of scan lines for VHS. Now, I am not used to working in this sort of space. To get rid of this sort of not black, neutral tone and excessively fingerprinted area that is increased since I left the light on so I could record my hand so you could have some reference stuff. Usually I'd work in the dark for this sort of thing because then you have less of this stuff. We're gonna make it a lot darker. Check that out. Now it's almost entirely removed. Whoa. That's crazy stuff. Whew. Now, depending on what you're using this for, you can save it out as an animated GIF, given the length of the animation and the looping nature of it. That's a practical usage of it, but I'm going to use this for some video, so I am going to export render video. I don't need this at high quality, but I'll put at least medium. Call it hand. Done. I'll save this file for reference. HandScan sounds like a real good name. Now, let's create an image that exists in the round, taking full advantage of the manner in which a scanner captures image, meaning small snippets of information horizontally capturing all at once as it moves in a direction. It's cutting it up into, in this case, thousands of pieces as it's going through. So, instead of before, where my hand was just slightly moving, I'm going to start with my hand in a position somewhat like this, and rotate my hand as the scanner goes across to create a unique image. So let's hit scan. Watch as I rotate as the scanner is going forward. It's kind of awkward, but the final image reflects that semi-awkwardness and its curious visuals. Check that out. So, right here, my hand wiggled more, which created these distinct lines that are thinner. My thumb looks really cool because it captured bits and pieces of my hand pressed up against the glass as it rotated against it, but it's only capturing very thin sections at one time, so you can take advantage of that, the fact that this image is slowly captured in that manner. Well, I guess that's it for scanning. Experiment a lot and you'll get cool stuff. My favorite approach is changing the amount of distortion between images so that you end up with something like this hand, where the degree of distortion increases slightly, but it still has a quality about it that is difficult to recreate digitally because the variations are so chaotic. Well, thanks for watching.